Trying to steal it.
Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Temple City Council for Thursday, February 19th, 2015. Please rise as Thomas Peckall from Temple Fire and Rescue leads us in the invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Director of IT for the City of Temple, Alan DeLaura.
Please bow your head with me and join in prayer. Almighty God, grant our leaders wisdom and conviction to make decisions for the good of the people they serve. Please watch over the men and women of our armed forces, keep them safe, and return them home to their families who love them. Father, thank you for the many blessings you bestow on us each day, the food that we eat, the roof over our head, the families. Watch over those who are hurting in mind and body. Father, we're thankful for the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ. We offer these prayers in his name. Amen. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is public comments. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may do so prior to this meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken by the City Council. We do have a couple of folks that are signed up. I've got Bobby Thompson signed up and wishing to speak. He'll just step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor Dunn, Judy, our fathers, and council members. I am Bobby Thompson. I live at 1107 South 10th Street. I am an East Temple concerned citizen. I recently retired after 38 years as a certified nurse's aide. I want you all to know we are watching you all. I don't want to open a large can of worms, but here I go. On Tuesday, there were trains on Martin Luther King and Avenue C at the same time. I want to know what's up with that. I could not get by. The next thing I wanted to know, what happened to the money that was allocated to the Martin Luther King Street? The third thing is, why is there 3 names on 34th Street? Myrtle Kaplan is 1, 34th Street, and it's one other name. I thought that street was named after Myrtle Kaplan only. It's time for a change. It's time. It's time.
Thompson. Tony Anderson.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My name is Tony Anderson, and I just got back to the City of Temple, and I'm trying to get my life reestablished. And it's been hard because the transit, the hop y'all have, it only goes to certain spots, and the bus passes right by, like the Department of Public Safety, the parole office, and also the SNAP food stamp place that was downtown. Now it's out there on the loop, and they let us off like a mile and a half. And that's the only place to stop. So the rest of the place we got from there, we got from that mile, we got to walk all the way back to our destination, then walk all the way back to catch a bus. And we pay our our fare to get there. And the DPS and the parole office and SNAP, that's a very important place for us to to go. So a lot of people don't have transportation right off. And we know all we could get. We're not asking for a hop, a stand just for a sign to put up there. They said, because the bus driver said that the only reason they don't stop because they don't have a sign. And that's all we need is a sign that says, hop, and then they stop and let us off anywhere close to there between Midway or anywhere close, and then what it is, the other closest spot is all the way to the Cracker Barrel in Temple. And from there, they let us out. We gotta walk all the way back down to the DPS station. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Item 3 on our agenda is a public appearance. We'll receive comments from Genevieve Gregg regarding the legacy of Rufus Granderson, the first black professional football player to graduate from Dunbar High School. Hello, Ms. Gregg.
Mayor Dunn, City Council members, my name is Genevieve Gregg. I am a Temple native. I went away for a while, and I came back. I retired in 2007, and I came back to Temple. And being a lover of reading and history, I wanted to do something to give back to my community. So what I thought about doing was organizing a committee of interested people to ask them, could we look for local Negro life and Negro achievers who've done something in Temple that we can all be proud of. The first one we did was Dr. Thomas E. Dixon. The next one was Lester Moore. And for this year, we have Rufus Granderson, which I am so proud of because Rufus Granderson, a local young man who was drafted by the Detroit Lions in 1955, and as you know, back then, it was still segregation, but Rufus Granderson bridged the gap of racial divide. When he was when he was playing at Dunbar, all the people, black, white, Hispanic, whatever the case might be, came to see him play. He was a huge young man, but he was a loyal, timid, almost like a big teddy bear. And he was a great student, very versatile. He played basketball, football, he ran track, and he was also very studious. So as I talked to the committee and asked them, should we make Rufus Granderson our 2015 Trailblazer? I mean, I was just impressed because I am a Temple native, and I love Temple, and so did he. What he did when he got drafted, he actually played for the Dallas Texans, and then he played for the Canada. So Rufus Granderson always let it be known that he was from Temple, that he graduated from Dunbar, and also that he took Temple, Texas, Dunbar High School, beyond the borders of America. He went to Canada, and Canadians found out that Rufus Granderson, Temple, Texas, Dunbar High School. So we should all be proud of Rufus Granderson. This is all I think.
Greg? Item number 4 is we were going to recognize Mark Erskine for his years of service to the Railroad and Heritage Museum Board. Unfortunately, Mr. Erskine's father is very ill right now, and so we're going to table this again into the next meeting. So please keep the Erskine family in your prayers right now. Item 5, we're going to I'm going to ask Chief Randalls to come up. And we're going to recognize Julio Renteria for calling 911 on January 24th, 2015 regarding a fire in his neighborhood. All right. Here you go.
Thank you, Mayor.
Saturday, January 24, 2015, shortly before 12 noon, 13-year-old Julio Renteria was in his backyard jumping on the trampoline with his younger brother. Julio looked across the fence and noticed smoke coming from the window of the duplex next door. He ran to turn on a garden hose, went inside to tell his family about the fire. Julio then called 911 to report the fire. Julio's father, Jose, sprayed water on the outside wall to prevent the fire from spreading. Julio and his uncle Sergio went to the duplex and knocked on the door to alert the occupant inside. With no one answering, Sergio forced the door open and went inside to alert the man who was sleeping. Julio went next door then to alert a woman who was preparing to go to work in the other duplex and tell her about the fire. Temple Fire and Rescue believes Julio Renteria is to be commended for his actions when he noticed smoke next door. He helped a neighbor safely escape. His calling 911 allowed for a rapid response by firefighters who quickly extinguished the fire and prevented extensive damage to the duplex.
And Julio, in recognition of your efforts and your care for your neighbors in your neighborhood, we'd like to present you with this commendation plaque and gold coin of recognition from the Fire Chief's Office. And just want to say congratulations and well done, young man.
Thank you so much. Item 6, if I could ask Kevin Beavers to come up. We're going to recognize HEB for their sponsorship and support to the city's Parks and Leisure Services Department.
Mayor, council, city staff, good evening. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we had our annual volunteer recognition at the Convention Center, and that recognizes individuals that help us throughout the year. And you'll hear from our department, from everyone, that we cannot do what we do without individuals and corporations. And there are certain ones that really stand out, and a cornerstone for our department is HEB. I came here over 15 years ago, and they were helping us back then, and they've been faithful every year. They helped us with the Kids Expo last year. Over 400 youth went to the Convention Center to learn about health and wellness. They also helped with our Temple Parks Foundation, Movies in the Park. And the one that we really want to recognize them for right now is HEB All-American Fun Fest. That's also known as our 4th of July, one of the best times in Temple each year. And that is partly due to HEB's generosity and kindness. In a second, I'll ask E.T. Ferris and Amy Lanehart, and I'll recognize our staff to come up. But, you know, that event is probably the single largest event we put on. We have a lot of partners. I would imagine we have at least 10,000 people, not only in the park, but kind of surrounding area. It's a great time, and the financial contribution and just sometimes the support with manpower, we couldn't do it without them. And if E.T. and Amy would come up, and then Holly, if you would come up, she's our special event coordinator, and Chuck Ram, assistant director, and then Charlie Bryant, you come on, he's the new recreation superintendent. Sure, that's what we find, just right up there. You can follow him up here. So since I've got a microphone here, but you have a microphone there now, Dan?
I do.
Oh, then we will switch around.
There we go.
What I'd like to do is just, from our department, is officially thank you and welcome you here tonight, and I hope that the partnership continues for many, many years, and we can actually explore more opportunities for other things that may be coming up in the near future. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And would you guys like to say a few words?
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course you would.
Yeah. Well, we're just thankful to be in the Temple community. We've been serving here. I don't think this is on, but I probably don't need it anyway. We've been in the Temple community for over 55 years. We're celebrating our 110th celebration this year with HEB, and we're just glad to be a community champion and partner, and love serving in the community and appreciate that recognition. Thank you.
Thank y'all. Item 6, the consent agenda. I'm sorry, forgive me. Item 7, under reports, we'll receive the City of Temple Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for fiscal year ended September 30th, 2014. And Tracy Bernard.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. According to the city charter of the City of Temple, an annual independent audit is required to be made of the financial records of the city by a certified public accountant selected by the City Council. The Council engaged the firm of Brockway, Gershbach, Franklin, and Niemeyer, P.C. The City of Temple Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, also referred to as the CAFR, for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2014, will be presented by Stephen Niemeyer, CPA. Mr. Niemeyer is a partner with the accounting firm of Brockway, Gershbach, Franklin, and Niemeyer, and will also be available to address any questions the council may have. Mr. Niemeyer.
All right, thank you. Honorable Mayor, City Council, it's always a privilege to present the comprehensive annual report. Actually, it's a 200-page document, and we aren't going to go through all 200 pages, but to me, what's significant about this document is how the financial world looks at the city. And the document is actually prepared by your finance department. They do an outstanding job, and we'll go to the next page. I want to start my presentation by just making some acknowledgments. The 2013 report, the one we presented last year, received the Certificate of Achievement for Financial Excellence. That was a 33rd consecutive year. So the city has received this reward. It's a national award. It's a very prestigious reward, and they've received it now for 33 consecutive years since 1981. That's essentially my entire career. That's quite an accomplishment. They also have been receiving the recognition for their budget, the Distinguished Budget Award, and they've received that for the last 19 years. The Assistant Director of Finance, Melissa Propelski, she's the one responsible for preparing this document. She receives assistance from Stacy Reisner, Jennifer Emerson, and Stacy Hawkins. They do an outstanding job and makes our job all that much easier. But the city is well presented in the financial world with this document. Next page. That's right. As we look at the financial document, what we see is not only is the city well represented with its finance department in the way the city is presented, but also the strength of the financial council and the management in making decisions that give strong financial results. One of the things we'll see is that the local economy is getting stronger. We see that in terms of increased sales of property taxes. We also see that in terms of new businesses coming to town. We have the Panda Power Plant, Buc-ee's, and Mars Pet Care that are coming to town this year. Total revenues have exceeded $120 million. This includes the increase of property tax and sales tax revenue, as I mentioned, is a sign that the economy is getting stronger. We also had $14.6 million of grant proceeds that was received during the current year. This included $5.4 million for the revenues for the pass-through grant. That's related to Northwest Loop 363. And then a $6.7 million grant that will be used to improve the airport. The city's unrestricted net position is $43 million at the end of the year. This represents over 4 months of operating cash, a very strong financial position. The next page. The net position for the city, this is the total assets less total liabilities, actually decreased $4.9 million this year. And that's a timing issue. The monies that are being used for Loop 363 on the Northwest is really not an asset of the city. It belongs to the state. And so as that money is being spent, we're spending out resources, but we don't immediately or able to record an asset since it's not our loop. The offset to that will be that in the next few years we'll receive $16.5 million from TxDOT for the use of that loop. And so those monies will be coming back to the city. The retirement plan with the Texas Municipal Retirement System is strong. It's funded at a level of 80%. It was 81.8%, and we'll talk about why that slight decrease occurred this year. The city's investment in capital assets are in 2014 increased by $24.5 million, a huge investment in our city's assets. Total outstanding debt decreased during the same time period of $1.8 million, and then the city was able to refund debt during the current year with an economic gain of $1.6 million. Very significant. We're being able to take advantage of these low interest rates. Next schedule. This schedule is a schedule of the total revenues of all the operations of the city. And what you'll notice right away is I've separated out the pass-through grants. I did this because don't, if I include them with all the other numbers, it really becomes distorted. But in top, the little green at the top, the light green at the top is the pass-through grants. We'll see this both on the revenues and on the expenses. The bottom green represents water and sewer. It's 25% of the total revenues of the city. And as you can see, since 2011, when we had the last time we've had a drought, the weather's been really moderate, and so our revenues from the water and sewer have been relatively stable. The next is the yellow. The yellow is the government services. It's 22% of the total revenues, and it's had consistent growth for each of the years that we're presenting. The property tax is the third. Most time people think of cities, they think property taxes being the single largest source of revenue, and it's actually your third source of revenue. It's 17% of the total, and its growth is predominantly fueled by increased values, not by property tax rates. The actual property tax rate in 2014 is actually lower than what it was in 2005. Sales tax is the fourth source of revenue and is coming very close to equaling the property tax, and it's 16%. In the last 4 years, sales tax has increased 25%. And again, that to me is the strongest indication of a growing economy. Mentioned the grants and $6.7 million of airport improvements received in 2014. That's the pink. And then all other, you'll start to notice in 2013 you have that bump in the blue at the top, towards the top. That represents the recovery of the monies, the $5.3 million recovery as it related to the police headquarters. That money was actually originally spent in 2011, so as we look at expenses, we'll see that expense as well. And then the light green at the top, the $20.8 million received in the last 2 years, this was monies that were invested in the Northwest Loop 363. On the schedule that follows is the expenses. Water and sewer is the bottom green. It's 22% of the total, and it had an average increase over the last 5 years of 4%. Public safety, which is in the yellow, you can see there's an increase in 2011. That increase in 2011 was related to the police headquarters, and that money was recovered in 2013, as we just saw. The general government is the blue. It's 12% of the total, and it also increased around 4% over the last 5 years on average. The cultural and leisure is the lighter blue. It's 10% of the total, and it increased 3.4% on average for the last 5 years. And if you look at the highway, which is that light brown, which is it's pretty much level. And that, as I've taken out the investment in the Northwest Loop 363, you can see the net investment in that stays about the same every year. And then the light green at the very top, obviously, is the most significant item on this graph. And $40.8 million has been spent in the last 3 years, most of it in the last 2 years. $20 million more than what grants have actually been received or been funded by this pass-through agreement bonds. The city, as I mentioned before, will receive $16.5 million of this monies back over the next, in the future years. So those monies will come back, but right now, that was a huge investment on the part of the city to get this accomplished. Thank you. This is the net position of the city. This tells you at a snapshot in time at the end of each year where you are. The most significant part of this graph is actually in the blue. That represents the uncommitted, unrestricted monies of the city, and as I mentioned, it's just over 4 months of operating monies are available going into 2014, which shows financial strength for the city. The decrease in the red is the monies that are required to be set aside for bond service, debt service, and so that decreased in the current year. And then the green, since is the investment, the net equity that the city has in its capital assets. It's at $117 million, and that's significant because that's a historical high for the city. That's huge. That's your equity in your house. It's your equity in the infrastructure of the city, $117 million. Turn attention to the retirement funding. This is a graph that represents the assets of the fund as composed as the red, which is the unfunded portion. So if you took the red and the green together, that would be the total liability of the pension plan. One of the things I need to point out is that first thing you see is that big jump in 2010, and you might think there's a mistake because 2010 is actually listed twice. That's because the plan was restructured in 2010. In 2010, the active and retiree funds were merged together, and when that happened, then you can see that huge jump after the restructuring. The net result of that was the unfunded obligation decreased by $7.9 million after the restructuring, and that's why the restructuring occurred. The other thing you'll notice going from 2010 going forward is that the assets don't seem they seem to be like on a very level incline. And as you know, the market's been substantially better than that, so it doesn't look to make you a lot of sense. But from an actuarial standpoint, they use smoothed out assets. And what that means is if your return on your investment is more than what they're expecting it to be, they actually bring that into income over the next 10 years. So the market increase that you had in 2013 isn't going to be recognized until 2022 in full. 10% a year of that market increase gets amortized. That's why that looks so smooth. Another thing that happened in 2013, you see that increase in the red, that obligation, that means the obligation went up. That's because the TMRS made a change in one of the assumptions, and we'll talk about that in more detail, but that's not because it's just a change in the assumption that the TMRS made to try to comply with what the changes in the standards are going to be going into 2015. So for 2015, pension accounting is going to change. There are going to be some major differences. One of the main things that was accomplished was they disconnected the pension accounting from the pension funding, which I think is significant. I think it's important to do. If we're ever going to account for pensions, you've got to separate the two issues. And so they now will be separate. In 2015, the city and all cities will be required to report the net pension liability on the balance sheet of the government-wide statements. It also will require the city to recognize a measure of the pension expense in the government-wide statements as well. That's different than what is actually required. The actual required determined amount would be. And then we'll have some additional disclosures. And the purpose of the disclosures will be to talk about the assumptions that are built into the plans. Assumptions are very significant in determining what the liability is. And so there's going to be required additional disclosures on what the assumptions are and comparing the assumptions to what's actually being recognized each year. One of the more significant things as well would be when you're accounting for the pensions, you're going to account for them based on the actual assets that are available, not based on what this smoothed out asset would be. That's going to be very important, I think, for all the cities. Right now, there's a huge difference between what the actual assets that are available to fund these plans are versus the amount that's been actuarially determined on a smoothed out basis. There's over $7 million of additional assets available to fund the Temple's retirement plan that's not being reflected in the way the system's reporting it today. I mentioned that the increase in the liability in 2013, or actually the most recent year we have to report, which was 2013, was based on a change in the method that the liability was calculated. And that's going from what they could call a projected unit credit, which is the blue, and an entry age normal, which is in the red. And what happened was with this, it was a funding mechanism. So it's not only going to affect the liabilities, it also affects the funding. In the way the plan was calculated prior to this year, it was always projected unit credit, which means if you think of it represents this blue line, and you think of an employee coming to work for you that's going to work for you for 20 years, it was intended that the amount that you would fund towards a retirement plan would start out as a smaller amount, and as they got closer to retirement, that amount would increase substantially. That's one of the main reasons why your funding percentage has gone up so dramatically in the last few years as that baby boomers got closer and closer to retirement because of this one built-in assumption to the plan. And so we're moving away from that, and they're going to the entry age normal, which would be from day one, the actuary will calculate what they believe would need to be paid every year on a consistent basis, a level basis, to fund that obligation, which that's substantial. Has a substantial impact on what the accrued liability will be, and that's why we saw that we actually dropped a little bit on the percentage that we were funded in the current year. It also makes a difference on futures. You'll see every year from now on, the funding percentage continue to climb and to be more fully funded. So, and it will be more level going forward. It'll make it easier for cities to fund their plans at a level that they can sustain. The last graph that I have is actually the entire Texas Municipal Retirement System, and this is the funding percentages. When you look at this graph, to me, it sort of tells a story of what's happened over the last 10 years as everybody's focused more and more. Do we have enough money to fund these plans that we've committed? Obviously, the biggest change that you see at first is in 2007. In 2007, the TMRS realized that they were not taking into consideration the annual cost of living that were built into the plans. And when they did recognize this, you can see that substantial drop in the amount of funding. It dropped 8.4% in 2007. That had nothing to do with what the cities were doing. It had to do with what the actuaries had left out and was trying to correct. Knowing that this was a problem in 2010, the TMRS restructured the plans, bringing the retiree plans back together with the active plans. This almost offset that one actuarial issue. It increased in 2010 7.1% in funding. And then you can see between 2012 2013, in total, they dropped off 3.1% in their funding ratio. This recognizes this difference I was talking about between the projected unit credit, where you fund retirees towards, as they get closer to retirement, you fund it more at the end, you weight it towards the end, to what we're doing today, where you're funding it evenly throughout the person's career. And so that, while the city of Temple only dropped off about 1% in its funding, overall the plan dropped 3.1%. And so you can see what they're projecting. If everything goes as they're expecting, it'll from now on consistently climb in the percentage that it's being funded. I think they're right. And one of the things that's going for not only this city but all plans with TMRS is the fact that there's a substantial amount of what they call deferred earnings. That is, the actual earnings that are available are substantially higher than what assets are being reported when they calculate what funding percentage your level is. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Niemeyer. I know it's a big job, and thank you to the Finance Department for all of the for keeping us on the straight and narrow. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Item 8, we'll receive a report from the Police Department as required by the racial profiling statute contained in the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. Chief Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Again, as the item description indicates, that this report is required by Texas statute. It's found in the Code of Criminal Procedure, known as the racial profiling laws. The items that we'll discuss this evening deal with vehicle stops, and to be specific, we're talking about all vehicle stops. And though the majority of those certainly will be about traffic violations, all vehicle stops of any violation of law. So we're also talking about criminal stops, and some of those crimes certainly are minor. Some of those are more serious offenses, but again, all vehicle stops, regardless of the type of offense, and those that result in citation and or arrest. We also have to track those stops that result in citation or arrest by the races, if you will, identified in the statute. We'll also indicate to you the searches that were conducted during those types of stops, and also when police officers indicate they knew the race of an individual prior to making a decision to stop. In 2014, the department made just under 27,000 traffic stops that resulted in 13,879 citations. Of the almost 6,000 arrests made by the department during 2014, 1,390 resulted from traffic stops, or about 24%, and that's been consistent through the years. This chart indicates on the left the races as they are stated in the statute itself. So that's not my terminology. That is what's in the statute. The next column are the raw numbers of citations issued to individuals in those groups. The column following that are the percentage of all citations issued to those groups. And then there's information from the United States Census in 2010 for the city of Temple, and would remind you that that data is a little bit old, but it is what we have to work with. It'll probably be another year before the Texas State Demographer comes out with some updated information for us. And then the final column makes a comparison between the percentage of total citations issued to each group compared to the census population. So, for example, individuals of Hispanic descent were cited at almost 3% below their representation in the 2010 census, while individuals who were Caucasian were cited at almost 3% above their representation. Individuals of African descent at 1.1% above their representation of the population. And then individuals who were Asian and Native American at 0.4% below their representation. Individuals who are from Middle Eastern descent, there is no census data for that group. I would suggest to you that it's probably similar to individuals that are Asian, or maybe between that number and the number of Native Americans in our community, but there is no data to relate that to. This graph is intended to give you a visual representation over 10 years' time of the three most populous groups. The vertical bars are the percentage of citations issued, while the horizontal lines are the population percentages either in the census or through the Texas State Demographer in those middle years. As you can see, the citations issued to those three groups generally follow the line of population representation. Next, we'll talk about motor vehicle stops that lead to arrest. Again, about 5% of our traffic stops lead to some type of arrest. Again, as you can see, 25.5% were Hispanic, 37.4% Caucasian, 36.6% persons of African descent, and 0.4% Asian, 0.1% Native American, and there were no Middle Easterners in this particular category. Overall, officers indicated that they knew just under 5% of the time that they knew the race of an individual prior to making a decision to stop. As you can see, in the area of citations, the vast majority of time, police officers do not indicate they know the race of an individual prior to making that stop. But in the arrest scenario, that percentage goes up significantly. And again, as we talked about, officers are frequently given information about individuals, descriptions, etc., and crimes that have occurred that they're looking for particular people. Sometimes they may even know the individual that they're stopping. So in an urban environment, this is certainly expected and not surprising whatsoever. When searches are conducted during stop, again, we can see that during those citation situations, and again, less than 1% of the time, a search is conducted when a citation only is involved in the situation. 72% of those individuals agreed to the search. When arrest is part of the situation, you can see that the percentage of searches goes up fairly significantly, but also the consent drops, and again, the stakes are higher in those situations, so that's not surprising. But overall, still over half of the people that officers searched during 2014 agreed that the officer could make that search. I think it's important that we talk about the demographics of the Temple Police Department. There's a lot of debate in our country right now about policing representing the communities they serve. The top chart is 2009. The Temple Police Department had 131 sworn officers at the time. In 2014, and in fact as of today, the department has 144 officers, and the areas that I would bring your attention to, one is females in the sworn part of the department have increased 88% in that 5-year period. Also, officers that are African American or Hispanic, each of those categories have increased 27% in the last 5 years. And in looking at some recent federal data on recommendations for hiring on public safety agencies in Central Texas, in fact, we meet all of the recommendations except for Caucasian females and Hispanic males. The law requires us to do a number of things. First is we must install recording equipment in all of our vehicles that are primarily used for vehicle stops. We do that. 100% of our cars are so equipped. We have to conduct periodic reviews of those videos, and we do so as well as whenever there's a complaint on an officer. We have a written policy that defines what racial profiling is and the use of bias. It also prohibits the use of bias in policing decisions. We have a process for the public to make complaints on police officers, and in accordance with state law, those complaints must be in writing. We take corrective action if an officer is found to have violated our policies on this matter, and certainly such a finding would be a very serious situation for that officer's career. We also present this report to our City Council, as well as file a report with the State of Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. So to conclude for you, I would tell you that it's my opinion that the Temple Police Department operates in a fair and consistent manner with the diversity in our population, and that there's no evidence that Temple police officers use race or any other form of bias to make their enforcement decisions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions for Chief Smith?
I was just wondering, on the stops, what are the usual reasons for arrest?
Oh, ma'am, they cover the gamut. Typically, in a traffic scenario, if it's not dealing with a driver's impairment or warrants, they might deal with invalid licenses or suspended licenses, things like that. But it does range the gamut. But I'd say probably number one would be warrants.
And I guess the second question is, what is the department doing to hire and employ diverse employment?
Our best tool is recruiting. We're a state civil service department. That does not allow us really any ability to give preference to any groups other than military veterans. They get extra points on a written test. Otherwise, we use recruiting primarily for bringing people in with a variety of backgrounds to us, and we've been very successful at that and very fortunate in the people that we've been hiring.
Other questions or comments? Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
It's time for the consent agenda. All items listed under this section in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and be considered separately. Council, this is item 9A through 9O. We're going to pull 9A for voting. Are there any other items that you wish to remove for separate consideration or discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Items 9B through 9O, keeping out 9A.
Motion for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. And item 9A, under the minutes, the February 5th, 2015 special called and regular meetings, and we're just going to table that until the next meeting. I'll entertain a motion to table.
Motion to table item 9A.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. And on the regular agenda, item 10, under resolutions, consider adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of the following vehicles in the amount of $94,773.88. And Ms. Batke, oh, there you are. Hi.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is on your regular agenda because there are some vehicle purchases that have a local preference option available to you. On your consent agenda that you just authorized, there were 5 vehicles on there totaling $97,791 that did not have a local preference option. However, on your regular agenda item, we do have 3 vehicles totaling $94,773 that you do have a local preference consideration to. We did open bids for vehicles on February 3rd. There were 6 independent bids received, and we received responses from 6 vendors, one of them being a local vendor, that being Johnson Brothers. The consent item, item 9H that you just authorized, had 5 vehicles on it. excuse me, 3 vehicles went to Sam Pack 5-star Ford out of Carrollton for $50,961. Those vehicles did not have a local preference option because they were not within 5%. Johnson's Brothers bid was not within 5% of the low bid. The second one was 2 vehicles to Caldwell Country Chevrolet for $46,830, and on that one, Johnson Brothers did not bid on those midsize economy pickups. The 3 bids that have local there are 3 bids that have local preference implications. However, staff is recommending that you table the first item, item A, on that for the Ford F-150. The council's adopted local preference policy. And basically, our direction is that staff will recommend the low bidder, and then it's up to council to determine if there's economic benefit to award the local vendor with that bid over the lowest bidder if they're within 5%. The 2 vehicles that you have the option for are items 10B, which is a Ford F-250. The difference there in between the non-local vendor and Johnson Brothers is $432.02. Item C is for an F-350. The difference there between the out-of-town vendor and the local vendor is $379.46. So the total preference options available to you, the incremental cost of those options is $811.48. The total budget for these vehicles is currently set at $70,220. Funding needed if you would determine that local bids are warranted would be $71,031.48, making a deficit in the budget of $811.48. If you elect to take the local bids, Finance will do a budget amendment to move the appropriate funding from other savings and other projects or other items bidded in the year. In conclusion, again, staff is recommending that we table items 10A. There are some specification things that we need to resolve that was brought to our attention today. Agenda items 10B and 10C, you have the option to award to the low bidder, or you have the option to award one or both of those vehicles to the local vendor. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. You do have in front of you a short analysis that we went over in the workshop with the different ways that you can go.
Thank you. Council, any questions? If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion on items 10A, B, and C.
I make a motion to table item 10A for the purchase of a F-150 truck, and make a motion to purchase the Ford 250 and the Ford 350 truck from Johnson Brothers Ford Temple in the amount of $71,031.48, based on the additional economic opportunity that result by awarding the purchase to local vendor.
Second. Motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 11, consider adopting resolutions A, ordering a parks bond election for May 9th, 2015, and B, authorizing joint election agreements with the Temple Independent School District for the May 9th, 2015 election. Mr. Beavers?
Mayor, Council, hello again. It was an oversight by my part. I thought we had introduced our recreation superintendent that we hired recently. Before I get started on this, I'd like for Charlie Bryant to stand up. He comes to us. He has a lot of experience. He's worked for the city of McKinney in Parks and Recreation, and then his last post was at Southern Methodist University over their recreation program and their facilities. So once again, surround yourself with great staff, and it's a good timing that he comes on. So I just wanted to recognize him here tonight.
Thanks, Charlie. Welcome.
And then, it seems like this presentation I've given, I don't know how many times, I I would tell you that I could do it blindfolded, but you would probably challenge me to that, Mayor, and I don't want to take that challenge. So I know how
Okay,
you
well,
are.
it's a possibility.
I know it is. But anyway, welcome. I'm excited not only to present this to you again, but people may have picked up a little bit in the paper on what I've recommended to you recently, and the ones that decided to stay here tonight actually get to see the full version of it, and also how exciting it is. It could be a game changer for City of Temple, for sure. If you remember that our department went out for a Parks Master Plan back last year. Master Plan is our document that guides the city, guides our department on where we need to go over the next 10 years. And it's usually about every 10 years you need to redo one just to make sure you keep up with current trends in the community and the nation, and what does your citizens really want. So it is sort of a roadmap. That plan came back to us. It was adopted by council in December of last year. Over $66 million worth of projects identified in it. Definitely cannot accomplish all $66 million projects in one bond election. That's not feasible, and we realize that. I did bring to you, if you'll see up there, you've had a first blush at a council workshop in January, and then just this last week at your budget retreat, I brought it back forth to you, and the package that I'm going to recommend that we call election for is based on that discussion from last week. Let's see here. So after the process we went through with the master plan, and you don't take the book and spend all the money and the staff time and consultants and just put it on a shelf. Now we've got to figure out, okay, how do we try to at least implement part of it, if not all of it, and of course we already knew it's too much. So the city manager asked us to look at projects that we could go out for a GO bond, general obligation, and that's what we've done. And that's those type of bonds are usually used, as you see, to fund big projects, infrastructure, facilities, and we are going to recommend tonight that council, you could call for election in May. The bond package has 20 components to it, and that will enhance and maintain the city's existing park system, and also try to respond to any growth in the community. So you may also ask, what's left? You know, we've got over $66 million, and this package tonight is a little over $26 million. Well, there's different ways that we're going to continue to work and chip away at it. Some of the projects inside of that package was talked about continue the downtown development. And right now, the reinvestment zone has some of the same existing projects on their radar, so they could help out. We could also continue to go to Parks and Wildlife for grants. That's been our biggest source of grants in the past. Also, the smaller things that's in this book, we could put in our general budget every year and ask for it. It could be more shade structures at playgrounds. So there's ways to accomplish that. The majority of it, it's big dollar items, and so down the road, we don't come to you every 3 or 4 years asking for money from a bond election. The last time we did was back in 2007, and so whatever we can accomplish, we would probably have to come for another bond down the road, but that would be way down the road. I'm not going to read every detail here. The slides, there are backup slides behind this that will explain in detail again. There are the 20 projects. As you'll see, $27.675 million for the total package. That's a 5-cent tax rate impact. Also, $50 annually on a $100,000 assessed home. The nice thing about this package, if you look, that's just a shot of City of Temple. And you look and you'll see that the projects are spread all over the city. And as we go through this presentation, at the end, you'll realize that we also touch youth, middle class, we talk senior citizens. We touch everybody that we could in all parts of the city. The first one that I'm excited about to roll out, and they're in no particular order. That doesn't mean this was the number one project. It just happens to be the first one on the slide, but I think it has great potential to set Temple apart, is the Blackland Prairie Grass Park. There are very few areas in the state that have never seen a plow touch the soil, and there are some in Temple. And what we would like to propose is we would purchase the land and in the first phase, be able to put a trail in and then also put some parking in so people could go walk the trail, and then we would have some probably interpretive signage. Down the road, in another phase, we would have some buildings where school groups could come out, educational centers. This one has the potential to be very, very nice, but like I said, this is a great one right here to start with. The single biggest component of this bond package is well needed. It's in the athletic park on the west side of town. You'll see the price here, a little over $11 million. And what do you get for $11 million? You'll get 4 baseball fields, 4 softball fields, 4 soccer fields, playground, parking, those amenities. If you look at the growth right now, it's headed west. That's where the development is, and we just do not have athletic facilities out in that area. The other nice thing about this is you get this built and you combine it with our existing facilities. Now you can host bigger tournaments. We've heard from soccer groups that we have 6 fields right now at Currumpii. We need at least 4 more to bring in a nice soccer tournament. This one would be joined right down the Adams and Central. They said that would be great. That's easy. We go to these huge cities and we have to drive over to Houston and Austin, so that is going to be no issue just going up and down Adams to get to your location. But that's what we'd get there. Those that have had any dealings with our youth sports associations, you'll know that they're in need of repair, upgrading, and we'll start off with Mercer Field. That's in our Lions Park, primarily when tournaments come in, and also our own softball group. Our athletic department runs groups, leagues out of there. What we're calling for here is we'd take the existing bathrooms, concessions, we would level it, we would build new, and I will tell you, I make this caveat right now, is that the pictures you see may not be representative of the actual buildings that, when it's all said and done, they're just a picture that's an example that what might be built, but just want to make sure that you don't come back and say, well, that doesn't look like the building. That's just a representation that how nice it could look if this were to pass. And then also, we've got some field drainage issues that we need to work on. Northern Complex, this is in Wilson South area, Wilson Park. This is primarily used by the Baseball Association, and what this would do is take, once again, the bathrooms, concessions, take them down, build new, and then also replace all their wooden bleachers with aluminum bleachers and shade canopies. And as I start rolling through some of these slides, so I don't forget, I couldn't put every single item detail on the sheet. There just wouldn't be room. So what you're seeing is the bulk of the project on the screen. So, Scott and White Ballpark improvements. If you remember a couple of years ago, maybe now time just flies when you're having fun, but 3 or 4 years ago, Minute Maid came in. They redid Wiseman Field. Very nice field, but they just didn't have money to put in lights for us. And the baseball group could really use lights, so this would call putting lights on Wiseman Field. If you look up here, I don't know which is the pointer, but the building on the top left blue there, that is a restroom and concessions all wrapped together. It is very tiny. It would call to add additional, replace and add something very nice out there. Wilson South, this is primarily the girls' softball fields, and also when tournaments come in. The picture on the left is existing, and you can tell what it could look like. Also, what we are proposing to do is add an umpire building, just like we have at our other softball complex. Between games, umpires need a place to get out. They need to go eat. They need to have a place to change. This facility does not have it, but this would propose putting one of those facilities in there as well. Jefferson Park, this is a jewel on the north side of town. A big open lot right now, a lot of potential. We would take the existing playground, replace it, put a canopy over it, and except for the one I'll call out in a little bit, every time we're going to put a new playground in, we're putting shade covers over. If you drive around the summer and anywhere we have shade covering, you will see kids flock to it. Take all access playground in Lions Park, it's just covered covered with kids and covered with shade. But here we'd add a trail, pavilion. We would add irrigation and green it up. Optimus Park, primarily used for practice for groups. It's on the north side of town. If you look up there, it says current parking, and that's where they park. They park in the alley, they park in the grass. Also, what they do is when league is on, we put a porta potty out there. That's not the way to run our business. So this proposes a new restroom out there, a trail playground, and that will dress that park up nicely. Carver Park, it butts up to the VA hospital on the east side of town, if you're unfamiliar where that is. This would call for playground and swings to be replaced. We feel like the shade and the trees that are there existing would be enough that we wouldn't have to put a canopy over that. But they would get the new playground, a half basketball court, and a pavilion. Oak Creek Park, just a show of hands, who knows where Oak Creek Park is? Now, let me ask you this. If I tell you where's Pig Park, have you heard of Pig Park? PIC Pig Park, say yes. Most people identified as Pig Park off as Forest Trail. We're put in a trail, new playground, shade covering, and the nice thing is I had to insert the pigs because they decorate every season, whether it's Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving. They're always decorated as something. And it's another example of how this community takes ownership of their park. I mean, who would have thought that they would have done that when we put it in? We've got people that help us lock gates at parks. I mean, people just take ownership and pride in the park, and we love it. Western Hills, off of Antelope and the Loop. This one I'm excited about because it adds a trail, but also adds some play nodes. So as kids might do one thing at one play station, they'll around the corner, they'll see another play structure, and then off they go. So not only are they playing, but they're exercising. They're going up and down the trail, and that's what that one gets. And then we'll take the existing playground, which is in not bad shape, but we'll put a shade cover over it and add a pavilion out there. Simmons Community Center, it did a master plan. We had one done last year to identify needs. Over time, that center, you go anytime during the day, it is hopping with activity. And over time, just the needs has changed. The flow of traffic inside the building has changed. So we worked with Architectural Edge and come up with some unique and interesting and awesome ideas. Off the back, we would put a deck on there. And so if you were out there, the deck is built, and here you go. Now you have a place that you could go out, have a reception or whatever you may want to do on the back deck, but you would be overlooking part of the lake. Reconfiguring space on the inside to better accommodate what the needs are out there. And if you'll look at the green compared to the, as I flip through this in a second, you'll know that over 50% of the inside space is being repurposed to make better use of what they need it for. And then also on the back side, we would have a brand new room for programming. And what's not included in this, it was hard to show, is the road into the facility needs a lot of work. So we're going to work on the road, and we're also going to take the entryway and widen the mouth up, make it easier for entry and exit. And then the whole elevation changes. Right now, if you were to go in during the winter or in the summer, you're going to get a strong breeze from the south. And if you're over there, I wish I knew how to work this. The entry is from the side actually now. Now we're changing everything up, and it's going to go straight from the front. So the elevation's changing. It's going to be awesome. I mean, that's going to be, it just looks beautiful. Also part of this package is the Crawl Pie soccer fields. If anybody's had kids in soccer, and I look around and I don't know you have, people will tell you we may not have enough soccer fields to run big tournaments, but they will put our fields up against anybody's fields in terms of the quality. They're just great. The only thing, just over time, it's on a kind of a tiered system. Over time, the silt has just built up around the edges, and it doesn't drain as properly as it should. So we did set money aside to address the drainage issues. And then on this one particular field, field number 6, we're going to do some work actually on the field surface itself that holds water. That's probably the number one request by the Soccer Association is the drainage to help them out. Lions Junction, everybody should know where Lions Junction is, off South 5th. It was a hit as soon as we put it in. We opened in 2009. That was part of the bond package in 2007. We opened in 2009. But immediately when we opened, people said, where's our pool? Where's our deep water pool? Because they were used to Lions Pool. And sometimes people just like getting in a body of water that doesn't swirl them around. You go right down to Lions Junction in the lazy river. It may say lazy, but it can move you around. And people just like to chill out. What this does is propose, this is an example. This is not necessarily what it would look like. A place that people could always do lap swimming, but also a place where people and their kids could get out and just enjoy some downtime. Wilson Park improvement, another, I keep saying this is awesome. I think every project on here is awesome. You go to Bryan, College Station, in the bigger cities, and the basketball courts are covered. And when you got them covered, what happens? You got people playing ball even in the heat of day. This will be great. We will decorate it up. This is just a picture, but we're going to put bricks around the columns. We'll decorate it up, have lights, have a timer on. They can't stay out at midnight, but at least people can stay out later and play basketball. I have a feeling if you drive by this park when this gets done, you will see a lot of people here. J.C. Park, this is another one. Does anybody know where J.C. Park is? It's also known as, most people, which is great to have this identity, is Rocket Park. If you say, where's Rocket Park? They can tell you exactly. The kids will tell you exactly where Rocket Park. They won't tell you where J.C. Park is. But this is the Rocket Park. We'll replace the existing playground with new, cover it. It'll get a splash pad, add exercise stations around the trail. This is a very heavily rented facility as well. The other thing that came out in this master plan process is practice field for football multi-purpose, and specifically on the east side of town. This proposes, if you see on the left here, the building off to the far horizon is the fire station on Avenue H and 34th Street. So H is actually off to your left. This proposes to put a football field or multi-purpose field right in that area. It would not have lights, but it would be irrigated, and it would serve a lot of purpose over on the east side of town. Wilson Park Rec Center, another area that needs some help. It's if you walk in there now, I've heard it just doesn't grab you anymore. It's just a little bit older. This was master planned back about 4 or 5 years ago. So this is an example of what was proposed back then. We would need to modify it a little bit just because since that plan has come on board, we also took on the Blackmon Community Center and made that part of our teen center and youth activity rooms. And a lot of what we repurposed was before that, and some of these rooms were going to meet that purpose. What's nice about it is if you look at the bottom right-hand corner picture, it's a tile floor right now. There's no windows in it. One example of how nice it could be is wooden floor, windows along all the edges of the wall, brighten it up. And if you can see the existing lobby in the top right-hand corner, and then potentially what could the lobby look like when you go in. See how much nicer it looks? It just looks newer. You don't have to build another new rec center to do that, but we will spend a little bit of money. And down at the bottom right-hand corner is the room where they propose to put a lot of windows up and down along the wall to brighten it up. Probably the number one item that was identified was in our master plan process was you've got to go find land and get land before it's gobbled up by development, because when it's gone, it's gone. And it was identified in the general area. We need another community park on the southwest side of Temple. We prefer it to be along the Leon River. It doesn't have to. That's not a game changer, but it could offer a lot of different activities along the river if we can get that. But if we can't get it, we can find land in southwest Temple, and it would be fine. What is this? What do we think we're going to do with this part? It will not be your traditional community park which has ball fields. This one would have themed playground, and this could change, but if we got it along the river, it could be an aquatic playground theme. And there's no telling what the kids will know this as if it turns out to be the way it goes. A huge splash pad, a nature trail, pavilion. This one have eventually down the road it'll have another skate park. Calls for a dog park. So this one will be very nice. This one will be at least the size of Miller Park. Right now, we're thinking it's going to be anywhere from 30, 35 acres, and that puts you around the Miller Park size. And then once again, just to follow up with the projects that you see there that I just went over, here's where it kind of lands all across Temple. And once again, we recommended the bond package of 5 cents. Yearly is $50 on a $100,000 assessed home, $4.17 a month, or $27.675 million. And I think it was in another slide you probably read, but that does include all contingency and bond issuance costs as well. And just remember tonight, that's the dates have kind of rolled off of this, but tonight we're asking you to call for an election. Early voting, of course, it's up there, and that would be for the May 9th election. If you do not do that tonight, then the last date you can call for election is February 27th, and that would be a special call meeting from here. And I believe I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beavers. Council, any questions? Very nice presentation. And if I could remind everyone that the master plan was put together through the help of a cross-section of the community. So these are the things that Mr. Beavers talked about were actually things that were brought up during the master parks planning process. And if we are to call the election this evening, I just need to remind everyone that the council and staff members cannot speak for or against. We can call for the election, but we can't speak for or against how anybody can vote. But thank you very much. And Councilor, are there any questions or comments?
Mayor, I have a quick slide
Okay.
to throw up there on the Parks Bond election. A little bit of same information that Kevin just went over. But of course, election day would be May 9th, and early voting starting April 27th. But the proposition would, voters would vote for or against the issuance of tax bonds in the amount of $27,675,000. And the way the proposition's worded, the money would be used for constructing, acquiring, approving, renovating, expanding, developing, and equipping land and buildings for park and recreational purposes. And as it stands right now, it would be a joint election with TISD.
Council, any questions or comments?
I think a lot of thought has gone into the master plan, a lot of effort by lots of different people, and as Mr. Beaver mentioned, it does cover all areas of the city, from youth to middle age to older people, and just about everybody covered. And I think it's a good plan.
If there are no further questions or comments, then I will entertain a motion for item 11A, ordering a Parks Bond election for May 9th, 2015.
Motion for approval of ordering a Parks Bond election for May 9th, 2015, as presented.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. And item 11B, authorizing the joint election agreements with the Temple Independent School District for the May 9th, 2015 election.
Motion to approve authorizing the joint election agreements with Temple ISD for the May 9th, 2015 election.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 12, consider adopting the following. 12A, a resolution of support for a housing tax credit senior project by Passaran Affordable Development, LLC. And 12B, a resolution of commitment to local funding in the amount of $897,000 for a housing tax credit senior project by Passaran Affordable Development, LLC. Graham.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As the council is aware, we have received notice from Passaran Affordable Development of their pre-application to the Texas Housing and Development Corporation for housing tax credits for a senior affordable housing project in West Temple. What they are proposing is at a location at South Pea Ridge Road and North Tarver Lane. It's for 94 units, 4 of which would be at market rates and 90 would be subsidized. They are asking for 2 items from you tonight, and we workshopped on this several times. The first is a resolution of support, which would give them up to 17 points with the state. And the second is a resolution of commitment to local funding, and we have reviewed our staff recommendation in our previous workshop if you wish to adopt that resolution. We have this a presentation which I think we presented to you at least twice, and I'll be happy to go through that or just answer any questions you might have.
I'd like to make one statement about the local participation is in the form of a loan and not, that money is to be paid back, and I think with interest, 3% interest, I think on a 5-year note, I believe that correct?
Right.
Not just a incentive for that billing, it is a loan.
Any other comments or questions? All right. If not, I will entertain a motion for item 12A, a resolution of support for a housing tax credit senior project by Pacern Affordable Development, LLC.
Motion to approve item 12A.
We have a motion. Item 12A dies for lack of a motion. Item 12B, a resolution of commitment to local funding in the amount of $897,000 for a housing tax credit senior project by Pacern Affordable Development, LLC.
No sense to make a motion for that. I wouldn't like to fund the project that doesn't exist, so.
Thanks. Item 12B, is there a motion at all? All right, that dies for lack of a motion. And if there's nothing further, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.